A Chinese DF-21D missile streaks across the sky at Mach 10, a ticking time bomb hurtling 1,500 miles toward a U.S. aircraft carrier in mere minutes. At this hypersonic speed, the crew has less than 15 minutes to detect, track, and intercept before disaster strikes. 5,000 lives and the specter of global conflict hang in the balance. These critical moments are a high-stakes chess match between Chinese missile advancements and American naval defenses. As tensions escalate in the South China Sea, the outcome of this technological standoff could reshape the balance of power in ways we're only beginning to understand. China's carrier-killer arsenal. The DF-21D is just one piece of China's multifaceted anti-carrier strategy, a system designed to challenge U.S. naval dominance. The People's Liberation Army Rocket Force employs a diverse arsenal of missiles, each tailored to exploit specific vulnerabilities. Think of it as a deadly multi-tool, with each component serving a distinct purpose in a coordinated attack. The DF-26 intermediate-range ballistic missile, for instance, extends China's reach to 4,000 kilometers, putting U.S. bases in Guam within striking distance. Its dual conventional nuclear capability adds strategic ambiguity, while its maneuverable re-entry vehicle complicates interception. Since its introduction in 2016, China has deployed over 200 DF-26 launchers, underscoring its role as a cornerstone of this strategy. Adding another layer of complexity, the YJ-21 hypersonic cruise missile can reach Mach 10 during its terminal phase, following a depressed trajectory that reduces detection time. Its high-speed maneuvering makes interception exceptionally difficult, and with a range of 1,500 kilometers, it allows launch platforms to remain outside the defensive perimeter of carrier strike groups. Airborne platforms like the H-6K bomber further enhance this arsenal's flexibility. Each bomber can carry up to 4 YJ-12 supersonic cruise missiles, creating multiple attack vectors. With refueling capabilities, these bombers extend China's reach well beyond the first island chain, potentially threatening targets as far as Hawaii. The PLA Air Force operates around 100 modernized H-6KJ variants, specifically configured for maritime strike missions. These weapons are supported by an integrated surveillance network that ensures precision targeting. The Yaogan satellite constellation provides over-the-horizon tracking, while long-endurance drones like the BZK-005 offer persistent reconnaissance. Ground-based over-the-horizon radar systems complete this detection grid, feeding real-time data to missile units for rapid response. To visualize how these systems work together, imagine a U.S. carrier strike group navigating contested waters. A salvo of DF-21Ds targets the carrier, while DF-26 and YJ-21s overwhelm defensive systems with simultaneous attacks from different altitudes and speeds. HE-6K bombers launch YJ-12s from multiple directions, forcing the strike group to deplete its missile inventory. This layered assault exemplifies China's doctrine: saturate defenses through attrition, leaving little room for countermeasures. The 15-minute window. The launch of a DF-21D missile sets off a high-stakes countdown, where every second matters. Within 30 to 45 seconds of launch, space-based infrared sensors from the SBIRS constellation detect the missile's exhaust plume. These satellites provide the first warning to the carrier strike group, transmitting data through secure military communication channels. With a detection range of approximately 3,500 kilometers, the strike group gains about 12 minutes to respond, an intense window for decision-making and action. Cloud cover can complicate this process. While infrared sensors penetrate most weather conditions, heavy clouds may delay detection by 5 to 10 seconds. This seemingly small delay ripples through the defensive timeline, tightening the already narrow window for countermeasures. Electronic warfare adds further pressure as Chinese jamming attempts could disrupt satellite communication links. However, military systems employ frequency hopping techniques to reduce this risk. Once the missile enters radar range, Aegis combat systems aboard Ticonderoga-class cruisers and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers take over tracking. The SPY-1 radar, with a nominal detection range of 200 nautical miles, identifies the missile. However, the DF-21D's depressed trajectory and radar cross-section reduction features may shorten this range. Establishing a firm track and calculating intercept solutions takes 8 to 12 seconds, during which the missile covers another 25 kilometers. The Standard Missile 3, SM-3, serves as the primary mid-course interceptor, engaging targets at altitudes up to 1,000 kilometers. Each SM-3 costs $18 million, and the strike group typically carries 20 to 30 of them. Interception occurs roughly 100 to 150 seconds after launch, with the DF-21D traveling about 500 kilometers by then. A single SM-3 has a 70 to 80% probability of success under test conditions, though real-world performance against maneuvering targets remains uncertain. In the terminal phase, the SM-6 missile takes over, engaging during the final 30 seconds of flight. Each escort ship carries 40 to 60 SM-6 missiles, while the CIWS provides a last-ditch defense with its 20mm phalanx guns, though these are less effective against hypersonic targets. Decoy systems such as Nolka active radar decoys attempt to confuse the missile's seeker head, but newer Chinese missiles may counter these measures. A saturation attack involving multiple missiles could overwhelm defenses. With 12 missiles launched simultaneously, the strike group might exhaust its interceptors, leaving subsequent waves unopposed. Electronic and cyber fronts. Prior to any missile launch, an invisible battlefield emerges where data and signals clash like unseen weapons. PLA electronic warfare regiments deployed jamming systems such as the Type 636A interference station, emitting immense power across multiple frequencies to disrupt U.S. radar systems. These systems target the SPY-1 radar's operating range, aiming to reduce detection capabilities by up to 40%. The jamming patterns shift frequencies to evade countermeasures, creating a dynamic struggle for control of the electromagnetic spectrum. Simultaneously, Chinese cyber warfare units from the Strategic Support Force attempt to breach the Aegis combat system's external interfaces, exploiting vulnerabilities in critical data systems that manage satellite communications. GPS spoofing adds another layer to this digital conflict. Using the Beidou satellite navigation system, the PLA can introduce significant position errors in naval navigation and missile guidance systems. This tactic acts like a digital smokescreen, distorting reality and forcing adversaries to question their own systems. While the U.S. Navy's M-code GPS receivers offer some protection, spoofing methods continue to evolve. During the 2018 Rim of the Pacific exercises, Chinese observers reportedly gathered electronic signatures to refine future attacks. Data links between naval units are another critical vulnerability. The Link 16 tactical network, responsible for most real-time information sharing, is a prime target for electronic warfare aircraft like the Y-8G. These aircraft attempt to inject false tracks into the network, creating phantom targets that could misdirect defensive resources. Although encryption and frequency hopping provide some safeguards, older systems remain susceptible to intrusion, potentially leading to defensive missiles engaging non-existent threats. To counter these threats, the U.S. deploys EA-18G Growler aircraft, equipped with ALQ-99 jamming pods, capable of disrupting enemy communications over vast distances. These aircraft focus on neutralizing Chinese radar systems that guide missile units, using advanced receivers to locate and jam enemy emitters with precision. Both sides also employ decoy systems to obscure their true positions, generating false radar signatures to confuse adversaries. The effectiveness of these tactics depends on the sophistication of the opponent's signal processing. Ultimately, these electronic and cyber skirmishes shape the outcome of physical engagements. A delayed radar detection or compromised data link can tip the scales, making this invisible battlefield a decisive factor in modern warfare. Impact and damage control. The DF-21D missile poses a significant threat to aircraft carriers, targeting their most vulnerable points with precision. A direct hit to the flight deck would create a 20-foot wide crater, crippling flight operations in that area. At least one of the 4 steam catapults would likely be disabled, and the arresting gear system could sustain damage. While the carrier could still launch aircraft using the remaining catapults, sortie rates would drop by 30 to 40%, severely limiting its operational capacity. Below deck, the explosion would breach bulkheads, sending shrapnel through critical electrical and hydraulic systems, further compounding the damage. The ship's defenses, though robust, have limitations. Modern Nimitz-class carriers feature 2.5-inch thick steel flight decks reinforced with Kevlar spall liners, but these measures are not impervious to specialized anti-ship warheads. The internal subdivision of over 2,500 watertight compartments and redundant critical systems helps maintain functionality after significant damage. But the strain on these systems would be immense. Secondary fires near aviation fuel storage and munitions magazines present the greatest danger. With 3 million pounds of JP-5 jet fuel stored in protected tanks, a penetrating strike could ignite fuel vapors, generating temperatures over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Damage control teams, equipped with oxygen-breathing apparatus and thermal imaging gear, would deploy using the P-100 firefighting system to contain the inferno. Nuclear reactor safety is another critical concern. The two Westinghouse A4W reactors are shielded by 6-inch thick steel, but intense fires could threaten cooling systems. Backup diesel generators provide emergency power for 72 hours, ensuring reactor coolant pumps remain operational. The engineering crew, including 30 nuclear technicians, continuously monitors radiation levels and reactor status. Historical incidents like the USS Enterprise fire in 1969 demonstrate that carriers can endure severe damage without reactor compromise if damage control measures are effective. Casualties would mount quickly. The carrier's hospital, with 3 operating rooms and 40 patient beds, would be overwhelmed by 200 to 300 injuries. Triage protocols would prioritize treatable cases, while nearby escort ships could transfer additional medical personnel. Despite rigorous training, resource limitations would challenge the crew's ability to manage such a crisis. The escalation ladder. A strike on a U.S. aircraft carrier triggers an immediate cascade of military responses. Within seconds, Virginia-class submarines shadowing the carrier group receive emergency action messages authorizing counterstrikes against pre-identified Chinese naval targets. Armed with Tomahawk missiles and Mark 48 torpedoes, these submarines are ordered to engage PLA surface combatants and submarine bases along the coast. Submarine commanders tracking high-value targets like Type 055 destroyers gain launch authority without further approval, reflecting the urgency of the situation. Minutes later, land-based aircraft at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa scramble. F-15E, Strike Eagle's load, AGM-158 JASSM, stealth cruise missiles for strikes on mainland targets, while F-35 as prepare for electronic warfare and air superiority missions. Meanwhile, Guam's Andersen Air Force Base activates its Bomber Alert Force, with B-1B Lancers loading JASSMs. However, operational delays arise as commanders navigate complex rules of engagement, requiring presidential authorization for certain inland strikes. This creates a tense atmosphere where every decision carries immense weight. As the U.S. mobilizes, allied nations face critical decisions. Japan must weigh the risks of allowing counterstrikes from its territory, knowing it could make its bases targets. South Korea faces similar dilemmas, compounded by its precarious relationship with North Korea. The Philippines, bound by a mutual defense treaty, hesitates while Australia's northern bases become pivotal for surveillance and strikes, forcing Canberra to balance alliance commitments with economic ties to China. China's response is swift. Over 1,200 PLARF missile launchers dispersed to pre-surveyed sites, while DF-26 brigades targeting Guam update their data. Coastal radar stations activate reserve frequencies to counter jamming, and the PLA Navy deploys surface action groups to defend key ports. Meanwhile, China's nuclear forces quietly increase readiness, a move that U.S. intelligence monitors with concern. U.S. Strategic Command raises its defense condition to DEFCON 3, dispersing airborne command posts and updating targeting packages for nuclear submarines. This subtle shift in posture aims to deter escalation, but risks misinterpretation. The human cost of these decisions looms large. A submarine commander tracking a Type 055 destroyer must decide whether to fire, knowing the consequences could spiral into full-scale war. In moments like these, strategy collides with the weight of individual choices. The submarine factor. The underwater domain is a stealthy shadow war where detection and evasion determine the victor. China's Type 095 nuclear-powered submarines, armed with YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles, can strike from 540 kilometers away, well beyond typical carrier group defenses. These submarines use pump jet propulsion to reduce acoustic signatures to 105 decibels, comparable to advanced Russian Akula-class boats. The YJ-18 missile's pop-up terminal maneuver, climbing to 30,000 feet before diving at Mach 2.8, complicates interception. Each Type 095 carries 18 vertical launch cells, enabling rapid multi-target strikes. U.S. Virginia-class submarines shadow Chinese movements, employing the AN/BQQ-10 sonar system, which combines active and passive detection to identify submarine classes by analyzing acoustic patterns. However, the South China Sea's thermal layers and variable salinity create acoustic shadow zones, reducing detection ranges by 30 to 40% compared to open ocean conditions. These environmental factors make tracking submarines a constant challenge. Torpedo engagements occur at close range due to these detection difficulties. The Chinese U-6 torpedo, with a 20-kilometer range, gives ships just 90 seconds to deploy countermeasures. The U.S. Navy's Mark 48 Mod 7 torpedo, with a 50-kilometer range and advanced homing capabilities, offers a longer reach but still leaves little time for evasive action. Both weapons exceed 55 knots and use wake homing techniques to bypass decoys, ensuring deadly precision. Near coastal areas, detection becomes even harder. China's underwater sensor network, including hydrophone arrays and autonomous vehicles, monitors choke points like the Luzon Strait. These systems feed data to shore-based centers, creating a comprehensive tracking grid. U.S. submarines counter with mobile acoustic systems that emit false signatures, though their effectiveness depends on water conditions, often disrupted by tropical storms. The strategic stakes are immense. A single undetected Type 095 could cripple a carrier group by targeting escorts with coordinated missile and torpedo strikes. Historical Cold War exercises showed submarines achieving kill ratios of 3-to-1 in confined waters. Diesel-electric submarines like China's Type 039A with air-independent propulsion add further complexity, operating silently for weeks and coordinating attacks in packs. This shadow war unfolds over days, with brief, decisive encounters shaping the broader conflict. Submarine victories often go unnoticed but can decisively alter the course of naval engagements. Allies and strategic calculus. Regional military bases face immediate threats as the crisis escalates. In Guam, Andersen Air Force Base activates its Terminal High Altitude Area Defense (THAAD) battery and Aegis Ashore system to counter incoming DF-26 missiles. The base's 48 fighter aircraft move to hardened shelters, while B-52 bombers evacuate to Australia. Civilian contractors are ordered to leave as the base transitions to wartime operations. Guam's limited geography poses significant challenges. Only 3 runways can support heavy bombers, making them vulnerable to precision strikes. The island's reliance on a single civilian power plant creates a critical vulnerability for missile defense systems, requiring uninterrupted electricity. In Japan, the government convenes an emergency session to interpret Article 6 of the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty, which allows U.S. forces to use Japanese bases for defensive operations. Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, housing 48 F-15C/D fighters and 12 KC-135 tankers, becomes a focal point for regional strategy. The Japanese Prime Minister faces intense pressure from Washington to authorize counterstrikes, while Okinawan officials demand base closures to protect civilians. Economic stakes loom large. 23% of Japan's exports, worth $145 billion annually, go to China. Cabinet divisions emerge between defense officials prioritizing alliance commitments and trade ministers warning of economic fallout. The Philippines grapples with its obligations under the 1951 U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. Chinese missile strikes on Philippine bases hosting U.S. forces raise questions about automatic retaliation. The Philippine Navy monitors Chinese Coast Guard activity near Scarborough Shoal, a flashpoint for past standoffs. The president must balance treaty commitments with China's economic leverage, including $12 billion in Belt and Road investments, and the livelihoods of 1.7 million Filipino workers tied to China-dependent industries. Australia's northern bases become critical hubs for U.S. operations. RAAF Base Darwin hosts 2,500 U.S. Marines and 6 B-52 bombers, enabling strikes across Southeast Asia while staying outside most Chinese missile ranges. Pine Gap assumes a vital role in processing satellite data on Chinese missile launches. Domestically, the government faces pressure as 38% of Australian exports go to China. South Korea hesitates to expand the conflict beyond the Korean theater. U.S. forces Korea request access to bases, but Seoul weighs the risks of Chinese economic retaliation, particularly against its semiconductor industry. Meanwhile, Taiwan's military scrambles F-16V fighters and activates coastal defenses, preparing for potential amphibious assaults. The economic shockwave. Financial markets react within minutes of the missile launch confirmation, sending shockwaves through global systems. In the blink of an eye, Brent crude futures surge 8% in pre-market trading, while Singapore's Straits Times Index plunges 12% at the opening bell, reflecting the region's vulnerability to disrupted shipping lanes. Automated trading algorithms, triggered by geopolitical keywords, unleash sell orders across Asian markets. The VIX Volatility Index spikes 35 points as investors scramble to hedge their portfolios. These rapid shifts underscore how sensitive financial markets are to instability in the South China Sea. Maritime insurance markets buckle under the pressure. Within hours, Lloyd's of London designates the South China Sea a war risk zone, driving premiums from 0.05% to 0.25% of cargo value. For a 20,000 TEU container ship carrying $500 million in goods, this means an additional $1.25 million per transit. Shipping giants like Maersk and COSCO reroute vessels through Indonesia's Lombok Strait, adding 1,800 nautical miles to Asia-Europe routes. These diversions increase fuel consumption by 30% and delay deliveries by up to 2 weeks, further straining global supply chains. Semiconductor supply chains face immediate disruption. Taiwan's TSMC halts shipments from Kaohsiung port as insurers refuse coverage for vessels carrying critical chip-making equipment. A Tainan factory producing 60% of the world's advanced semiconductors activates emergency power, but logistics bottlenecks prevent outgoing shipments. Within 72 hours, automakers in Germany and Japan announce production cuts as just-in-time inventory systems collapse. The global spot price for DDR5 memory modules skyrockets 300%, driven by panic buying. Energy markets spiral into crisis. China releases 20 million barrels from its strategic petroleum reserves, covering just 3 days of consumption. LNG carriers bound for China divert to Japan, where utilities pay 50% premiums for emergency deliveries. European gas futures hit record highs, while coordinated releases from the US and IEA fail to restore market confidence. Currency markets swing violently. The offshore yuan depreciates 5% against the dollar, while the Japanese yen surges 3%, intensifying hedge fund losses. ASEAN currencies hit multi-year lows, prompting the Federal Reserve to activate dollar swap lines with Asian central banks. Bitcoin briefly spikes 15% before retreating, reflecting investor uncertainty. These cascading disruptions highlight the fragility of interconnected global systems, where a single flashpoint can ripple across industries, economies, and lives. The DF-21D missile is one piece of a complex deterrence ecosystem where technological advances continually reshape strategic balances. Missile defense systems face inherent challenges against saturation attacks. Each SM-3 interceptor requires precise radar guidance and flight time, creating vulnerabilities against simultaneous threats. As China develops hypersonic glide vehicles and the US deploys directed energy weapons, the technological race intensifies. Both nations also prioritize electronic warfare to disable sensors before engagements. In this escalating arms race, the South China Sea remains a volatile flashpoint. How will these advancements shape global stability? And can careful management prevent miscalculation from tipping the balance?